This is Series T, where we find the greatest entrepreneurs and investors in the world and force them to have tea with us live on air. I'm Imad Akun, founder and CEO of Mercury. Today we have Brianne Kimmel, founder and managing partner of Work-Life Ventures. Work-Life Ventures is a new fund focused on the future of work, which is very timely right now. They've invested in companies like Webflow, Tandem, Voiceflow. Thanks for joining us and having tea with us, Brianne.
Awesome. Thanks so much for having me today. Also, and thank you for sending my favorite tea from Samovar.
Yeah, well, we love samovar. So when you were kind of imagining work life, how did you see it? How has that morphed in this current kind of climate?
Yeah, it's been a really interesting, past 2 weeks. I've had a lot of friends and investors and founders reach out to me and, say that right now there's been a real sort of self-actualization of the fund itself. We've made about 20 investments to date, all around this sort of future of work, but primarily workplace software. And so everything from developer tools, design tools, the companies that are finding product market fit and really capital efficient and moving quickly. The founders are based here in Silicon Valley. And then you end up discovering that they have like wonderful, highly efficient engineering orgs other places. And so this has been happening for a while. I have a company in the portfolio where both founders are based here, and I see them at dinner a couple nights a week, and like they're very much like heavily ingrained in like the Silicon Valley culture. That said, they have amazing engineers. They're in Cincinnati, Ohio, that are, strategically a few hours ahead. And so having those sort of like really leaning into some of the benefits of having different people in different time zones creates a highly efficient, and not to mention capital efficient model as well, because you can access global talent that are amazing to work with.
There was this whole theory that like a few people, I guess mostly on Twitter, proposed that like either you can't be like half in on like remote work. You have to be like either everyone's distributed or like no one's really distributed. Do you think that's like I guess now everyone's distributed by force?
I'm very curious to see. I think especially companies that are going to feel this the most, I think, are the large enterprise that had this global forcing function to which they immediately had to offer remote work. It's going to fundamentally change the way that people think about workplace culture, team structure. A lot of these things like probably aren't sustainable. Like I have been looking at a lot of tools for remote teams. I've been looking extensively at homeschooling because homeschooling is going through this massive resurgence where it's like you can actually access world-class teachers at a really affordable cost structure, and then working parents don't have to worry about taking their kid to and from school. And so I think there are a lot of these new systems, but the one thing that we haven't quite figured out, and like this is something that is, new and emerging, is like how do we all share the same space, and especially like in an affordable way, because I think right now it's like, we're still in a moment in time where a lot of individuals are living in very dense urban areas.
Do you think there could be a de-urbanification?
In the V1 of the work-life pitch deck, when pitching investors for the fund, they're like, okay, cool. So are you consumer or are you enterprise? And so at that moment in time, after investing in great consumer founders or great consumer product builders who happen to be building new applications for work, that's where I'm like, no, it's actually neither. I think that the lines will be incredibly blurred. One of the hypotheses that I had was that I think we'll see a new way that people think about their neighborhoods. Like I do see like people who work from home actually care a lot more about the location in which they live. And so they care about supporting their local restaurant. They get to know the front desk person at their local gym. Like you just like start to really invest in the place in which you live if that becomes like your central hub.
We talked about Tandem a little bit. What else have you seen that's like kind of blowing up? I guess like more startup and less known than like Zoom is obviously doing well. Where else do you see the biggest kind of impact of the positive kind of sense?
Yeah, I mean, Tandem has been an interesting one to see. I mean, they are seeing currently some are close to 10x week over week user growth. And so that's a really good signal where there's been this forcing function where now everyone's working from home. And as people are starting to get bored, or, as people actually want that sort of like in-office feel, then synchronous communication has become like a real value add in the ecosystem that's historically been more asynchronous or asynchronous first. And so moving beyond Tandem, I'm an investor called GetDuck. And what GetDuck does is it's real-time collaboration and on-demand videos attached to the code base. And so the entire vision there is like, rather than necessarily opening up another tab, opening up another app, it's actually keeping developers connected to the code at all times with the ability to add like very short status updates and very short notes. That way, it's much easier for individuals to collaborate synchronously and then also leave updates asynchronously. And I'm also seeing this new sort of category where I think in a lot of ways, people are thinking about ways to restructure their day and really remove the total of number of meetings. And so there's a number of companies in sort of the productivity space, but more focused on to what extent can you leverage information that's in the body of calendar invites, and to what extent can you start to stitch together status updates and team updates and things that will actually reduce the total number of meetings.
Is there one thing that Tandem does for us is like it creates these like idea of like a meeting, but that's not like a work meeting, but still work meeting. Like we have a Tandem channel called like Working Quietly Together, where people just like go in there and don't talk to each other, but like they know they're around kind of thing. Is there other types of things that are like kind of like this kind of passive thing that people were getting in the office? Like in the office, people have lunch together.
I think from a spatial standpoint, Tandem has by far the most thoughtful social features. And so I think there have been a lot of companies that have thought through a better way to take notes, a better way to update your team, a better way to stay in sync. I think they are by far the most technical and thoughtful on the social side, where it's like having those water cooler moments are important. Having a shared space where, like, especially if you identify as an extrovert and you want to be around people, like those passive sort of spaces are really important, especially if we're going to have extended periods of working from home. I also love, they have a Spotify integration, which I think is awesome. Like that's very subtle, but like having a little bit of music in the background when you're working from home, and like just really understanding, like even getting to know your coworkers and saying like, I don't know, what music are you listening to? I think right now all of those things are really important culturally. Moving beyond Tandem, it's been interesting to see, there hasn't been a lot sort of in this culture space because it was so new. There are a couple of Slack integrations. There's one called Donuts, and basically it's a random introduction to someone else in your company. And so I can imagine this working really well if you want to have skip level meetings, or if you want to just get to know someone randomly that you'd likely get to know in the elevator on your way up to the office.
Does it like connect to DM or something? Or?
It connects through DM, yeah.
That's cool.
Just a one-to-one matching. It's kind of like, hey, this is someone that works in your company you haven't met before. You guys should catch up. And I think in those catch-ups is when you actually start to really think about your own career progression. You start to identify, what are other people working on across different teams. And so I think that's how we can start to think through employee retention, because I do see one of the interesting things about working from home is like, while you become more connected to your community, you have a lot more time to be with your friends and family close by. I do anticipate that this will have a direct impact on employee retention. We'll end up going through a period of reimagining what a distributed benefits stack will look like. Is it actually, providing a coffee budget for remote employees where they can go to their favorite coffee shop close by, and then you provide that? Are there ways to actually do like team lunches in a distributed way? Like I think companies will have to get pretty creative.
We're both having tea right now, and I've had a few like moments of just having dinner with people where they're having dinner and we're having dinner. So like maybe having that in like a work environment is kind of interesting. But like I guess like there's also the non like benefit side of culture. I guess like there's friendships people make with each other, which help them collaborate better. There's these other kind of sides of like conveying vision.
You end up coming up with some really creative and thoughtful ways to bring people together. So I think like all team offsites will be increasingly important. I think like the ability for individuals to have some, travel and education spend. Travel meaning they can come to the office and visit whenever. I've also heard of some great, scenarios where it's been like, can you actually go work remotely to get to know another coworker? And so it's like, if I had a colleague that was working in Mexico City and my company would pay for me to go stay there for a couple of days and then I turned into a long weekend, like that's a really nice way to build a relationship and you still have a real, attachment to the company. There's still sort of this novelty for like having wine over Zoom or, having a remote birthday. And so I think once that novelty wears off, I think employers will have to rethink to what extent they can offer benefits and education. And maybe it's, access to products like Masterclass or Coursera or Udemy.
Do you feel like the types of companies you work with are kind of insulated with the current market conditions, or like what are you seeing in terms of like people thinking of raising right now or actively raising right now?
I did immediately see a shift a couple of days ago where valuations are coming down. Firms are being more selective with the companies that they're meeting. I think in a lot of ways, we kind of lost our way in lean best practices. I think that it was very not easy, but I think there was enough capital in the market where founders and firms were very optimistic and opportunistic in a lot of ways. And so I saw this specifically with enterprise software where, a lot of companies were getting funded based on potential. A lot of companies were coming in with, 18 to 24 months with no revenue. And so the idea was build a wait list, partner with 2 or 3 more like design partners. So choose a couple companies that you want to build alongside with, and then figure out monetization at a later moment in time. Companies that have been historically more productivity tools or solutions that are, a little bit lower on the hierarchy of needs, then I think those in particular are ones that will start to shift their strategy a little bit.
Yeah. One thing I've noticed is like there's definitely like a few companies that are still hot in this ecosystem, and it's like ones that people imagine are like gonna blow up because of the current climate. Like you're not tempted as like an investor to just wait, like every week is like a different situation, let's wait to see valuations go down more?
Oh, for sure. A lot of investors are doing a lot of working sessions around like how do we uplift our entire portfolio and how do we really like stabilize all of our existing investments. Firms are not taking as many meetings, they're waiting for evaluations to come down, but I think that also presents an opportunity for new funds that don't have board seats and that don't have to deal with a lot of the portfolio support from, the past 10 years. I feel quite fortunate in a lot of ways. I feel like with the work-life portfolio companies, all of them have greater than 18 months of runway. And so I think in a lot of ways, where I'm spending a lot of my time today is actually like the portfolio companies have runway and they're very capital efficient. Where I'm spending my time this week in particular is re-engaging with both companies that have raised in the last 12 months that potentially are thinking about seed extensions, that are potentially like need to capitalize a little bit more because they need a little bit more time to get to like Series A milestones.
If you do like speak to someone that's got maybe 6 months runway, are you saying, hey, you need to cut costs, try to get to profitability, or extend your runway to 12 months? Like
I would say cut costs is step 1. Step 2, and this is also like really determining to what extent can you layer in additional revenue streams. It will be a positive forcing function for really partnering with customers. And so it may require building specific features to retain large accounts. It may require like some specific work on the engineering side where not only are we in a period where revenue is important, we're also in a period where churn is going to be our worst enemy. And so I think in a lot of ways, companies will be forced to really spend a lot of time with the customers that drive, the majority of their revenue. And they may have to, fast follow with features and really like shift some of their product development towards like the features that matter most and ones that actually increase revenue.
I mean, I feel like there's probably a few startups out there that do have like maybe a 12-month runway, or maybe just individuals that have like 12-month runway, but like maybe their primary idea is in like a industry that's like just completely decimated in the current climate.
Yeah.
Whether it's like travel, like hospitality or something like that. Do you think there's like, I guess some of them will be saying, okay, we have this new opportunity, like we should make distributed work software, like, they'll be thinking about that. Do you think there's like interesting gaps that you've seen in the market where like you're like, oh, there's like an interesting idea? You were talking a little bit about like things in your thesis around like
Yeah.
homeschooling and things like that. Where are like gaps that you've like seen that like you haven't seen much activity in?
My last 5 investments have all been infrastructure. One in payments infrastructure, a lot's happening in sort of FP&A and finance. I think there are certain functions within an organization where they're going through this period of transformation where it's like what Salesforce has done for, CRMs, we're now seeing for different parts of the stack. There's a lot happening in sort of, adding real-time collaboration to any sort of document or process. And so I think the one thing that's super interesting about real-time collaboration is I think historically it's been viewed as, a way to keep everyone in the loop. The one thing that I'm hearing now that everyone's working from home is also having real-time commenting and a lot of these real-time collaboration features. It's actually accountability. So the ability to actually tag someone who's in the same product, it's ensuring that your coworker that's working from home is actually like working from home. I think in future, a lot of technology will have real-time collaboration. I think a lot of even non-workplace productivity tools will start to have some of these features as well. I like the model of what are the jobs to be done synchronously, because I do think that like in a lot of ways, having asynchronous solutions for work ends up creating additional work for someone else. And so it's sort of this Jira Confluence problem where it's like people just want to do their job and they want to do it very effectively. They don't want to create additional work for themselves or other team members. And I think oftentimes documentation is creating additional work rather than removing work. So I think in a lot of ways, we'll start to see new workflows emerge as more people are working from home.
Are there tools that are being developed, or maybe they're mature and I just don't know about them, that are like a little more focused on like the non-tech worker use case, like whether it's like gig workers or other people that also need these collaboration things, or is it just like the same tool set that can be like repurposed?
I think the native apps have done a pretty good job at this. And so Uber is highly efficient in the way that they dispatch drivers. There's also forward dispatching. There's all of these features that they have built where they want to make it as easy as possible for, drivers to find their next ride, especially with more people working from home and a whole class of labor that historically have not have to meet their clients in person. Like I feel for beauticians and barbers and bartenders, and we're starting to see yoga instructors teaching classes on Zoom. And I think people are very quickly adapting and finding ways to make money. I think that we will need more infrastructure and more tooling to make sure that's successful and fairly turnkey. The optimistic view is there are a lot of people that believe this will actually help to accelerate the long tail of people who create content and make money, of people that are trying a new skill and they actually are quite good at this skill because they have a lot of time to practice. And so I think in a lot of ways, like, not that these will be real levers for upward mobility. I think if anything, they'll be just a little bit of extra supplemental cash. But I think in a lot of ways, optimistically, there are a lot of new solutions and new ways that people are making some money.
What's the book you read recently that changed your view of the world?
I think Bowling Alone was a good one. I've been spending some time on video games, video game design, like to what extent will gaming actually change the way that we think about social relationships? The past, 10 years with urbanization, with, people commuting to and from work, we've sort of lost that like connective tissue to our neighborhoods. And so there aren't as many like bowling leagues. So I do wonder if we'll actually start to see that switch a little bit where it's like you can have community from home, like people are meeting in Fortnite and like catching up with old friends. Like there's a lot of like goodness that comes from like playing games with other people or connecting online.
Cool. Well, it was really great having you on our show, Brianne. If anyone wants to reach you, what's a good way to?
I'm on Twitter at Brianne Kimmel. It's Brianne at worklife.vc.
Okay. Awesome. Well, hopefully lots of people will get in touch. Thanks for your time.
Thank you so much for having me. It was perfect timing for this sort of conversation.